Good morning, this is the Fat Health Teacher. I think it's been almost a week since my last video, and I just wanted to kind of let you know what's going on. So, on Thursday, I got to leave to the Phoenix area and spend some time with my sister and her family. Um, got to go to a fantastic wedding that was beautiful and perfect. Um, got to go swimming, got to spend time with my partner and my child. Um, yeah, it was a good time. My body was not a huge fan of being on the road or in a car for that long, and as I am able to do, I took a step out of something. It was a door, or it was a car, or it was something, and my knee, like, I don't know what it's doing, but it feels thick and heavy and stiff and just not wanting to do a whole lot of movement. Um, both my hands getting numbness in all three of these fingers on both sides, depending on what I'm doing. It can happen when I'm reading, it happens when I'm trying to sew, it happens if I'm trying to pick up things or move things. Um, yeah. So, that being said, I feel like I haven't done anything productive in the last couple of days because I'm trying to give my body some time to heal. That means that I haven't moved my stuff out of my classroom of my old school. It means I haven't done any more work on getting my new classroom set up. Um, no dishes, just nothing. Which I was actually really proud of having days where that wasn't what I was doing, where I was actually going and doing stuff. But the pain in my hands and my knee have just been ridiculous. So, while I was on vacation, I also called and made an appointment with the hand clinic so I can get them to take a look at things and see what kind of relief I can get. Because having numbness, especially in my writing hand, not so good. Like, it even makes taking notes and highlighting things challenging. Okay, on to the topic for today. So, I was listening to a podcast called Best of the Left. If you haven't figured it out by now, I am liberal leaning for most things. This is what I teach my students, and I'm just going to kind of go through it. Is consent can only be given when a person is cognizant of what they're doing, right? So if somebody's been drinking and you don't think they can get, and they say yes, too bad. Don't risk it. And this is how I counsel my guys. This is how I counsel my girls. Don't risk it, right? If that person is worth having sex with because you care about them or whatever it is, then wait. If you're not sure whether or not they're giving consent, don't have sex. And the way I define consent, or the way I define rape, is the absence of consent. It is when a person is unable or unwilling to participate. Okay? So, this can happen in a lot of situations, but basically, I tell them it doesn't matter what the person's wearing, it doesn't matter what they're doing. If they're intoxicated or if they're high, do not have sex with them. Okay? Now, they will ask about, well, what if I'm in a long term relationship with this person? Well, then there is the possibility that consent has already been given because you are already in a relationship with that person. But if you've never had sex with them, don't have sex with them yet. At this point, I usually show them a clip from a movie called 10 Things I Hate About You, which was a variant of Kiss Me Kate, if you are more of a Shakespeare fan. And in this movie, the main character is Kate, and her sister Bianca is not allowed to date unless Kate is dating. So this kid who really wants to date Bianca pays a guy who is played by Heath Ledger. By the way, one of my favorite roles that he's done. Um, so he is paid to take Kate out on dates. And she ends up going to a party so that her sister can also go to this party. And while she's there, she's so uncomfortable that she drinks. And she gets drunk enough that she thinks that dancing on a table is a good idea. All right. And of course, everybody at the party is super excited that she's dancing on the table because she normally seems very uptight. The guy takes care of her. Heath Ledger's character takes care of her. Makes sure she gets some air, gets her back to her house, and she reaches in to kiss him, or she leans in to kiss him, and he rejects her because she's intoxicated, which I think is a very powerful thing. I think that that actually showed like how much he cared for her because he wanted to make sure that she was consenting when that event occurred. Another version or another variant that I like is Easy A. So if you're not familiar with the movie Easy A, the main character in that, um, gossip starts that she has had a lot of sex, and then she starts allowing people to claim that they had sex with her in exchange for payment of whatever, but she doesn't actually have sex with them, it's just to boost their reputations. Well, a guy that she has a crush on, um, she's having a really bad day. She is taken out to a dinner. She thinks this might actually be a real date. And when she gets there, she discovers that this guy thinks that she's a prostitute and brought money along to pay her. And then she is floored. Like she tries to explain to the guy, I don't actually sleep with these people. And he doesn't believe her. And then she ends up basically being stranded at the restaurant. So her crush, who works at the restaurant, gives her a ride home. And they have a little conversation. He says, look, I didn't believe anything that I've been hearing about you. And he asks, may I kiss you? And she says, no. So this is another example of consent, right? They could have kissed, and he did the smart thing. He asked, which is outstanding. He asked if he could kiss her. She said no, so they didn't kiss. Okay? They end up getting into a relationship later on. Another example that I use is that I have a friend who was invited over to a friend's house. Okay, so let's use the names Jordy and Crusher. Okay, so my friend is Jordy, and the female is Crusher. Okay, so he goes over to Crusher's house, and they're making out, and they have intercourse. But while they're having intercourse, she doesn't seem to be into it. She doesn't seem to be enjoying herself. She's just kind of lying there. And he doesn't stop. He doesn't ask her if she wants to participate. He doesn't ask her if she wants to continue. He just kind of finishes, and then they don't really talk, and he leaves. And the next time Jordy is around Crusher, like, he attempts to initiate, and there's no response. So they don't ever have sex again. And to this day, so we're talking like 15 to 20 years later, he still wonders if she had given consent. He's not sure. And this is a factual thing. We're all familiar with the fight or flight response, but one of the other things that can happen is freeze. And this is harder for a lot of people to cope with, because when you freeze, you're literally like that deer in the headlights, right? The deer either needs to run or they need to prepare to jump over the car. I don't know. But instead, the headlights hit them and they freeze, and they're just kind of staring at you, and like, you're trying not to hit them. You don't want to hit them because that's going to do a lot of damage to your car and you might kill the deer. But they're just there, and you don't know what to do, right? Well, this happens in it can happen in uncomfortable situations. You just have to either, if you haven't trained your body to respond in a different way, then your body is going to respond in a way that it thinks is the best. So in this situation, I have no idea what was going through Crusher's head, but it may have been that she was uncomfortable and she wanted to stop, but she didn't feel like she could because Jordy is a bigger guy. She may have felt like she led him on, and so he was entitled. Or she may have felt like he bought her dinner, and so this is how she has to pay him back. Right? There are a lot of reasons that people will freeze. There was another situation with a friend of mine we're going to call her Tasha. Okay? Tasha was up visiting her grandparents. She was going to go fly fishing with her grandfather, and while they were on the road, she took a nap because she got very car sick and the roads were very windy. So she was taking a nap. She put her chair back. She was in the passenger seat while her grandfather was driving, and it was just the two of them in that car. And she woke up to find her grandfather's hands in her pants, and he was fingering her, which was completely unexpected. And she didn't know what to do. So instead of saying, hey, what are you doing? Get your hands out of there, she froze. And she pretended to be asleep until he was done. And then she sat up shortly after, pretending that she had just woken up, and he had the nerve to ask her if she had enjoyed it. Okay. This was absolutely devastating for Tasha, and that relationship with her grandfather was never, ever, ever the same again. Um, so Tasha was not very old when this event occurred. I think she was 13 or 14 from what she told me. Um, One of the things that was really hard for her is that she did not fight. She did not open the door and try to get out. Um, and when I talked with her about it, she understands that in that situation, the best thing she could do is freeze. Because if she had immediately confronted him and started fighting, they could have gotten into a car accident. If she had attempted to leave, well, the car was going 65 miles an hour down a windy road. That wouldn't have been safe for her either. So, in that situation, the best thing for her to do was to not respond. As an advocate, I've encountered other rape survivors who did not respond, so they also basically froze during the event. Some of them are even more disturbed, not by the fact that they didn't respond, but by the fact that their body did respond and they orgasmed. Okay? So here's the thing, and this also goes to how guys are raped, all right? Which is probably the number one question that I'm asked when I go over rape. If the body is stimulated in different ways, even if the person does not want what is happening to happen, sometimes the body will still respond. Okay? So a guy doesn't want to have sex, but he's being touched, and he achieves an erection. There's going to be some guilt there, right? He didn't want to have sex, but his body kind of did not obey him. All right? Same thing can happen with women, and it can make it very difficult. And women will beat themselves up, guys will beat themselves up. Pretty much anybody who has been in this type of situation who did not react in the way they think they should have will respond in a manner where they are constantly questioning what they did. Well, I should have fought. I should have hit him. I should have done. And that's really what it comes down to, is all these shoulds, right? And if you are sharing your story with another person, it can be really hard for that other person to understand what you went through if you are telling them, I wasn't hit. Or the person asks, because this is a common thing, did you say no? And the person says, no, I didn't say no. And the reason they didn't say no is because they were terrified of what would happen if they did say no. They didn't know. It was an unknown quantity. Or they may have had fear that the person that they were saying no to would escalate, right? So maybe we're talking an intimate relationship, domestic violence type thing. If the person had said no, it is possible that she would have expected that additional violence would have occurred. All right. I have another friend. We're going to call her Lita. Okay. Lita was in a very psychologically abusive relationship. When she broke it off with her partner, she actually had to get a restraining order. And during the process of getting the restraining order, there were multiple violations by her former partner. We are going to call him Arthur. There were a couple of times when Lita's partner, I said I was going to call him Arthur, where he violated the restraining order and she ended up responding with a panic attack. On one of these occasions, when she called the police, the officer who responded said, okay, what happened? She told the guy what happened. And then he proceeded to essentially interrogate her. And in talking with her after the event, we think that the cop was trying to make a point that because A hadn't happened, she didn't need to worry about B. But he said, has he ever hit you? No. Has he ever threatened to kill you? No. Has he ever called you names? No. Okay? And I know that some of you are probably listening to this and you're like, well, how in the world was it abusive? Well, it was abusive in a lot of ways, but most damaging was the fact that everything that she had done, I think you remember me talking about this, the internalizing versus the externalizing. Well, in this case, Lita was internalizing, She internalized everything that had happened. And when he told her that she was a terrible partner and a terrible mother and that she was just like her family, she believed it. And it got to the point where she believed it so much that she wasn't sure that she should continue to live. She had some friends who pointed out what was going on, and when we talked with her, it kind of opened her eyes. And it definitely took some time, right? Because this was recognized by some of her friends in, I want to say, like March. And she didn't separate from him and recognize like the severity of what was happening until September. Okay? So it took a long time. It took a lot of patience on the part of her friends to help her navigate to the conclusion that they had reached months before, that this was an abusive relationship and that it was damaging her. It was not healthy for anybody involved. Okay? It is hard, right? I've talked with her since, and although things weren't physical, one of the things that she told me that she would do when she started, when she would notice that he was starting to get riled up, is that she would talk him down, right? So maybe she had got upset with him because he didn't do the dishes or whatever, and his response would be an attack on her. And sometimes he would storm out, sometimes he would continue to attack. And again, he wasn't calling her a bitch or a whore or anything like that. The things he was saying actually hurt her a lot more than just those names would have. So when she sensed that he was going in this escalating direction, she actually would do everything in her power to de-escalate, which meant that she would say, "You're right. You're right. This is my fault. I apologize. I need to be more supportive." Okay. I know I've gotten a little off track here with all of the different stories, but my point is that freezing is a legitimate response, and it's probably one of the hardest for people to deal with as far as being a victim versus being the perpetrator. Because when you're the victim and you didn't respond during the event, then people wonder if you asked for it. Okay, so this brings me back to the reason I started this conversation, which was the Stanford case, in which the girl was incredibly intoxicated and then she ended up behind the dumpster. I can tell you, just based on conversations that I've had with other people who have been in similar situations, that she is probably beating herself up like crazy. And even though people around her are telling her, this is not your fault, she's still thinking about all the things that she should have done instead. That she shouldn't have had so much to drink, that she shouldn't have dressed in a way that she did, that she shouldn't have flirted or spoken with somebody. Yeah, all that stuff, right? That she shouldn't have even gone to the party, that if she had just stayed home like she had originally planned, she would have been fine. Okay? And these should-haves are poisonous. You gotta be careful with them. Because, to be honest, no one deserves what happened. No one. Alright? If I go to a party and I drink and I get high, or whatever it is that I've chosen to do, it does not give anybody the right to violate me. It doesn't give anybody the right to steal my stuff. It doesn't give anybody the right to undress me. It doesn't give you the right. Okay? It's the same with your house, right? So your activities may have made the event easier. If I left my front door open and somebody came in and they robbed my house, guess what? It's still not my fault that my house got robbed. Yes, I made it easier, but the person who robbed my house is still the person who broke the rules. It was still clearly my property, in my space, and they took advantage, right? They came in and they're like, oh! And I gotta say, one of the very frustrating things about being a woman, and I remember this from going to college and getting things from my grandmother and getting stuff from my dad, is that there's this expectation that women have to be on high alert all the time. That if we are walking to our cars late at night, we need to make sure that we have somebody with us, maybe that we have mace or something else handy. But look, as one of the nurses that I worked with said, even if I stripped down completely naked and I was walking down Central, it would not be okay and would not be the same as giving permission to somebody to rape me. All right? So even if all the windows in my house are missing and my door's unlocked, it does not give somebody the right to steal from me. Did I make it easier? Yes. Will I learn from that lesson and make sure that my windows are shut and that my door is locked? Yeah, yeah, I will. But it's a terrible society to believe that we have to do those things. That it is on us as possible victims to prevent what's going to happen, rather than saying, you need to not rape, you need to not steal. That's really the message that we should be sending. Not, oh, it's the woman's responsibility to make sure that she doesn't do anything that puts her at risk, or that it's another person's responsibility to do XYZ, but that the person who's breaking the law is held 100% accountable. And I gotta tell you that in the Stanford case, that guy's not been held accountable. This Stanford guy is totally not. 6 months. 6 months for violating a woman in public. 6 months for completely changing her life. 6 months for having her second guess everything. 6 months for PTSD that she may be suffering. This is insane. And apparently he's going to be allowed to get out early if he has good behavior. I don't get it. And what's even more worrying is that when you listen to things that the parents have written, when you listen to things that he has written and has said since the sentencing, he says things like, I wish I had never gone to Stanford. I wish that I had never been a swimmer. Not, I shouldn't have raped her. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get that he was responsible for the choice that he decided to make. And this is the second thing that I teach my students. Well, I'm going to say actually this is the primary thing. You're responsible for your choices, and your choices will result in consequences. And those consequences, good or bad, are your consequences because of the choices you made. This does not apply, obviously, to situations in which something happened to you that was not a result of your choices. And going to a party and drinking and then getting raped, guess what? That is not your fault because that other person didn't get consent. Okay? I think I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm hoping that you understand the point of this message, of this broadcast, this video, and I want you to understand, if there's the possibility that your partner is not able to give consent, then don't have sex with them. Just don't do it. If they're drunk, if they're high, if they seem disoriented, if they've just lost a loved one and they're vulnerable, don't have sex with them. Wait until they can actually say yes and mean what they're saying. It's going to make your relationship stronger if you show them that respect. And I don't care if you're a guy or a girl, and I don't care what gender your partner is. Show them the respect and make sure they can consent. And if they don't seem to be enjoying what's happening, you need to check in. All right? That gentleman I told you about, Jordy, he checked in. Or he checks in now. Anytime that he's had partners, he now checks in. Okay? That is it for today, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Thank you.